Hey, I'm going to show you how to build a line chart in Power BI. I'm going to give you access to some cryptocurrency data from 2021, and we're going to build a line chart that looks just like this. So we'll be real quick and get right into it. So let's get started. So we'll go ahead and we'll open a new page here for me, and if you're just following along, this will be your first page. So what we're going to do is we're going to access our data, and the way that we do that is if you go, and there's another video I have on my channel of how to access Excel inside of Power BI. You just click Excel workbook and basically bring the workbook in. So you're going to want to make sure it's an Excel type and not a CSV, because that will matter. So once we have the data in here, let's go ahead and add a couple of things in. Let's go ahead and say over here on our side here, our fields, let's go down and check on the 24-hour volume, which is going to be what we want to pull in. And that's going to bring in that. And then we're going to go for the last updated date. Okay, cool. And then from here, we can go ahead and we can remove the year, quarter, and month. And let's go ahead and just say, go down here and just say last updated under the x-axis here. And that'll make it so that we're actually getting the date and not like the day of the month. So we by default have a clustered column chart, but let's go with a line chart. And we have this right now, and so this shows the sum of the 24-hour volume by the last updated date. And let's go ahead and widen this out so we have some room to work here. Now the reason this is dark theme is because I went over here to View tab and then went and selected the Innovate dark theme, and then that just kicked it off from there. But we'll go through a little bit of the rest of that. So that's just how to get it to look exactly like mine. But let's go ahead and change some of the names here. So we'll say date, and then for the y-axis we'll say just say token 24-hour volume, because that's what this is. Cool. And then what we'll do as well is we'll make a legend with the name of the token, and this will also split the line chart into having different levels for the different charts here. So additionally, let's go ahead and get rid of all of these stragglers down here. I think anything below roughly like 4 billion is going to be outside of what makes sense. So let's go ahead and say greater than, and we'll say, I think it's 123, 123, 123. I think that is the billion, but we'll check here. And that looks to be about right. And it looks like we are down to only a handful now. So anything above 4 billion, great, is what we will include. We'll set that filter, and that'll be on the visual. We could apply that to the entire page. Kind of depends on what we want to do here. And we can drag that filter down, I think, if we want to. Or we can just go ahead and drag in the volume 24-hour in here, and we could make a filter for the whole page if we wanted to. All right. Cool, so now that we got that, we're looking pretty good. Let's go over here to the legend inside of the build visual section down here, and let's call that token, all right, instead of just name. Okay, cool, so we have something going on here. So we have token 24-hour volume, the date, we have a coherent title, makes sense. We got a legend here. If we select these guys right here, we'll get some highlighting to happen down here in our chart. That's cool. Good deal. Well, let's go ahead and move on from the add data to our visual tab over to the format your visual tab. And for the x-axis, let's leave that as is, except for changing the font. So let's go ahead and make that, I like DIN, but you can use whatever you want. And then to contrast with the theme, let's go ahead and make that white. And we might actually even bring it up a little bit more from there. I just like to have that all of the legends be fairly large there. Okay, great. Let's go ahead and for the title, let's turn that off because it's already implied that it is a date. And I think at this point we can go ahead and we can collapse it. Actually, let's see what categorical does. Yeah, we don't want that. Continuous looks great. Y-axis, let's go ahead and do a similar thing. Let's remove the title because we already have an explanation of what's going on with this over here. Now we change it to a logarithmic scale. That's kind of interesting, but I think we'll leave it like that. Let's go ahead and change this to din as well. Pump up value, make that white. Great. Now for the legend, let's go ahead and say center left, which will give this a nice area right here. And then let's make the text, we want this to maybe be like the largest. And then let's also make that din and white. Great. Now for the title, we can keep that up there. I kind of like having that around. We can leave that there. For grid lines, I actually like to go with no grid lines, so let's remove those on both the axes. I think that's a little bit more clean. Now for zoom slider, I think that this is fine. We can go ahead and keep this around. I think it's a neat feature here, but we can remove it on the y-axis. I don't think we need that. I think the dates are the ones that would be the most valuable for us. Alright, cool. For markers, I like to keep markers. These round ones are fine. You can also go with the square, and we'll apply the settings to all. I like to increase these a little bit more to kind of hyperinflate them depending on how I go with it. And those are fine just by themselves. Okay, great. Now let's go to data labels, and we'll turn that on. But what we'll do, we'll maybe turn the label density up a little bit, or down a little bit. Here we go, yeah. So now it just catches the highlights, things that are more significant in a series specifically. Oh, my bad. And data label, we're going to go ahead and say what position above, just so that we have a clean representation of that. Everything that's above the point, that is the data label that we're looking for. Let's also make these a little bit larger in din. And this will also be white for the highest level of contrast. Okay, great. And we already have these set to billion. Sorry, detecting that. So that's great. If we didn't have that, we might need that. Now a background, we could add this in. This is a little bit different than what we had before. It's sort of up to you, however you want to do it. Now we can take the transparency up, or some people like to leave it like that. And this is a white, so we could actually go with a gray to kind of dull it out, make it even more subtle and even closer to the background. I think that that is a really good deal right there. So let's keep that. Now for see, markers, data labels, series labels. Let's see what we want out of this. Yeah, I like this because it gives a understanding of what this line actually is here. So if I hover over this day, it's not necessarily clear that this line is tether. If I hover over this, you know, it may or may not be representing what I want in the tooltip. So I don't want to confuse anybody. So that's one of the things that is super important. So let's leave that on. And we'll also bring those up in size. Cool. Make those white. As far as the background there, we could actually make a sort of different background on these. Go with something like a little bit of a color here, kind of differentiate that these are pointing sort of to these lines in the chart here. All right, cool. Let's go over to general, and then one thing we'll do is we want to take our title and make that a lot bigger. So I'm thinking maybe 25 looks good, and center that. And we can give this a background. It's up to us. But what I'll do is I'll opt for no fill right now. Maybe I'll give it a bold or underline or something of that nature. Or just leave it as is. Cool, so for effects, we can actually change whatever we want to do about the background here. We could change this to be however we want, right? So completely up to us as far as aesthetics, and this transparency is really cool because you can pick, you know, any color and then null that or increase that however you want. It is pretty interesting, but you're going to want to think about how your colors might clash or not. So let's go ahead and rock with maybe this one. This kind of sort of like, I like to call this like a Subaru blue, because there's a Subaru Outback color that's really neat that looks just like this. Okay, we can throw a shadow on this as well, and maybe we'll make that shadow colorful or something like that. And that's just for the aesthetic of the widget. It just gives it a little thing off of there. Cool. For the tooltip, so the tooltip is what happens when we hover over this. So we can actually do, to the report page, we can maybe go with default. And right now at the moment, I'm not quite sure why we're just getting what we're getting in the tooltip. So this is going to be something to debug later. But the essential of what we're going to do is, let's make the aesthetic in the tooltip really nice. So I like to make these a lot larger, so that way when they pop up, they're really clearly providing lots of information. So there we go. Awesome. That's exactly what we're looking for. Now this is tooltip, options, default, or report page. So what we could do, maybe we could go over here to, I think, this area, and then we could add data fields into the tooltip. Like, let's see what happens when we add in. Yeah, okay, great. Let's see what happens when we add in a name to the tooltip. Yeah, so what this is doing is providing the first name, and then it's giving the token 24-hour volume for that first name on that day. So maybe what we'll try to do, let's see if we can bring in, and every data set will react differently, so this is something to kind of experiment with. But maybe on this one, it might be valuable to say latest count. Let's see what the count does. Yeah, so this may or may not make sense depending on how you configure it, but I would bring some values into the tooltips, and understand that this is asking for the first name in the tooltip because it is only providing, it's not providing all of the values in the series right here. I can't remember exactly how I got mine to set up, but this one, I got them to sort of rank in a box. Like every day it would give me like the top leads that were reported. So all you're going to need to do is just kind of play around with that tooltip field and ultimately that tooltip setting, and you'll be able to make it look like that. Cool. So from here, we're looking pretty good. The only thing I added on was a trend line. So ultimately, the volume in the market over this period of 2021 was going down. So that's kind of neat to add in. We could change that to be solid, and then we could add in some sort of different color, which is what I did. I mean, like a cool green. And then from here, we could add some other lines, min, max, average, right? And from here, we can also do some additionally cool stuff where we color the line. This depends on how you wanna represent. So let me go in here, throw a white average volume. Cool. And then I can give it a data label there. and then I can say it goes on the left or the right, and then I can also display, instead of data value, just a name. I'll say average 24-hour volume. Turn the transparency down there, and then actually we'll go ahead and throw that red in there. Cool, so that's like really clear. Looks kind of ugly, but ultimately you can decide whether you need to keep it or if a line is good enough. But yeah, from here, I mean, ultimately this is a well configured line chart, right? So thank you for watching. Check out my channel for more videos. Definitely click the link in the description to get the data set, and have a good one.